Today on the Blockchain Report, Bitcoin's down to 109K, and it might be because $22 billion in options are expiring, turning the market into a billion-dollar game of tug-of-war. SEC Chair Paul Atkins says he'll root out Trump's crypto conflicts of interest, which sounds more like political Febreze than actual regulation. And South Park is back with prediction apps, Netanyahu, JD Vance, and Trump's unborn butt baby, because apparently satire and reality are now the same show. All that and more coming up today. Let's go! Good morning, my digital degenerates, and welcome back to our Friday episode of the Blockchain Report. I'm Hank Hudson, coming to you live from San Francisco. It's the end of the week. It's that time you realize your work week is over, but your portfolio is still working against you. Before we cannonball into today's madness, I want you to do me a favor and smash that like button harder than Peter Schiff smashing the reply under any bullish tweet. And make sure to hit follow for RoxomTV and me at Hank at RoxomTV. Because if you're still relying on your buddy Chad's Discord pump group, you deserve every rug that unrolls underneath you. All right, let's check the charts in this morning's market rundown and see what the numbers are looking like. Let's go. All right now it hasn't been the best 24 hours for our beloved orange coin. Right now we're hovering just above that $109,000 mark. We're down about 2% in the last 24 hours as people are awaiting a lot of new data that will be coming out today and see if we will be expecting some more rate cuts as we head into Q4, specifically the month of October. So we'll see if things are going to play out there. Let's see what else we got going on in the crypto verse here, gang. All right now, like we said, we got Bitcoin now below 109. Yikes, it's all over. Everyone cash it in. It's not. It's small dip. Ethereum right now, we have hovering beneath that 4,000 level, seen some significant drawbacks for ETH in the last couple of days. And we got Solana kind of getting hammered the hardest as of late. It was our darling here about 2 weeks ago, up to around that 250 mark, but now we're below 200 again. So things could be looking better for Solana. In TradFi, let's see if the numbers are working any differently there. Right now, we got the Dow Jones sitting pretty right around that 46,000 mid mark. We have the S&P 5 up about 0.1% today, not a lot going on there. We have the NASDAQ Composite sitting around mid 22,000 arena. And we got MicroStrategy. Hasn't been the best week for them. They are down beneath 300 after being in the mid 400s only a couple months ago. So Michael Saylor might be getting a little worried, but that's a man with a plan, so I'm sure he'll be fine. All right, let's go to see what the market charts are looking like with my main man, Luca Pagano, in this morning's Market Radar. Let's go.
Oh, it's beautiful, Hank. This is not financial advice.
All right, and we're back with our resident chart wunderkind, Luca Pagano. Luca, Bitcoin's down around 109,000 now. Everything's on fire. Should I be selling everything? What's going on? What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, Hank. I mean, we had a tough day yesterday, to be honest. We talked on Monday, remember? Actually, we talked on Wednesday, and we said we gotta hold those $112,000. Remember, we were around that area, and we couldn't hold, and we knew, I mean, or at least we imagined that Bits would be quite exhausted on the $110,000 to $111,000 because of repetition. When what we call support and resistance in the markets, Hank, it's merely high volume nodes being traded and a lot of interest in those levels. But when those levels get touched or get exposed too many times, the counterparty to those levels get exhausted. They say, hey, maybe we gotta try other levels, and I think that's what happened yesterday. That's why we basically splashed below those beats, that kept us going the days before, and now we're below that important level for me, so we gotta see what Bitcoin does here, but we definitely gotta be a little bit more cautious, heading into the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we had some information that's coming out, jobs reports, things of that nature that definitely influence Bitcoin's price, specifically with regards to whether we're going to see additional rate cuts as we enter Q4 of this year. How much of that do you think is coming into play with the recent downturn we've seen in Bitcoin's price?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's honestly a great point, Hank, because actually, we're gonna probably send a report soon on with Roxom on based on Q4 and the Fed cut and like how that basically influences the market, because I think it's not minor that the Fed already cut rates. We should be expecting honestly liquidity on Q4 because you have a money market which is gigantic, which definitely will be affected by that, right? So I think that we gotta definitely take into consideration that and uh, even more enough, or even more so if labor doesn't start recovering and we don't see some recovery on the market soon, so that'll be interesting to see, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And on Wednesday, you mentioned we talked about holding that 112 level. We're down to 109 right now. Do we need to recapture that level before the end of the day? Otherwise, we might be seeing some more downturns in the weekend, or what are the charts telling you right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, Hank, I love to zoom out a little bit, so we could do that very quickly, because
Yeah.
I think the weekly is very important for me right now because of the levels we are at, right? So basically, we had this rejection last week on the mid level. Remember, we just for better for more cleanliness, we basically had recovered the $110,000 the week before, and last week we've seen this mid level of the range. Remember, and we said, hey, let's be cautious. This was like our first target, or what we thought would be first resistance. We rejected that on the weekly level, right? Here we can see it very clearly, and this weekly level is more of an uncertainty. You have more of a doji kind of candle, which is important for us to analyze because it's like investors are uncertain onto what the roadmap for the weekly chart looks like, right? What you don't want to, that's for sure, it's a confirmation to the downside with a big red candle. That's honestly what I think. We still have some time, guys. Remember, we still have the weekend on, folks. So don't be scary right now. But yeah, we gotta be cautious. That's what I'm saying. For me,
Yeah.
the best scenario for us, what would be amazing, is to recover $112,000 for the end of the week, for us to be on safe territory above bid levels, right? On the short
Right.
term, honestly, and let's go down to the daily, right? On the short term, maybe we can swipe these lows on 108, $107,000. But we definitely gotta start rounding this bottom if we want to see more of a, we can wick down, but we should be heading north, considering that we're on a Friday, Hank, and the weekend is right around the corner, right?
Right. And, right now we're at that round 109 level. Just a month or
Yeah.
so ago, we were at new all-time highs. And we've been getting what I can only perceive as a little bit of bearish news recently, specifically with some of these Bitcoin treasury companies and their stock prices going down quite considerably despite their accumulations for their treasuries. Do you feel any differently about kind of the temperature of where Bitcoin is at right now as we enter Q4 than you did just a month ago? Or is this all kind of part of that natural September drawdown that we're used to seeing as we make our way into Q4 and hopefully what's another bountiful October?
Yeah, to be honest with you, Hank, I'm not surprised at all in terms of Bitcoin prices. We can talk a little bit of Bitcoin treasury side, but why am I not surprised, honestly? Well, we're basically 12.5% from the highs right now. And when September started, that we were basically this is the start of September here. We got this big down candle, and we were saying like, hey, is September gonna be a crash, a market crash, whatever? Well, we actually we talked here about this. I expected, honestly, a pretty boring September. Kind of a sideways, kind of a messy chart action, right? Which is more or less what we're seeing right now. We don't know how September is going to end. Remember, we're talking about
Right.
the importance of the weekly close, but we're also at a monthly close. So that's double important, right? If we see the monthly, let's clean up a chart real quick with you, Hank. On the monthly, we've got this very quite of ugly rejection to the upside, which is pretty clear, but we still haven't end the month, and that's important for us, right? Where we're starting right now, and where we should head. That's what gives us the better picture, of saying, hey, we should definitely recover 112 to start looking a little bit cleaner and see what the market gives us then, right? But in terms of
Right.
September, I expected quite sideways, messy price action. We should definitely clean that on October pretty quick, if we want to see a good Q4, right?
Right. I mean, I certainly hope so. We're all hoping for some nice Bitcoin big numbers under the Christmas tree this year, and it'll be here before we know it. So as we enter the end of the month, what are the floor and ceiling prices you're looking for Bitcoin right now? What should we be keeping our eyes on?
Well, right now we're at remember we're at cautious territory, let's say. I would expect for BTC to defend the levels we're at right now, tops $107,000, because basically that's covering our lows. If not, I expect, honestly, like, if we see very quickly, we had this initial bid demand, right? Which is what led to the earliest low. I don't expect. I mean, if we fall from here, I think we're gonna have more of a kind of crash down, honestly, to basically probably at least $102,000. That's why I'm saying, like, we're in cautious territory. How I would act, this is not financial advice, Hank. I just love to give my opinions away,
Yeah.
without anyone quite asking, besides you. But basically, I would love to buy on strength, like,
Yeah.
if we can recover 112, I feel pretty comfy buying, honestly. And I would also buy on a big strong reaction. If we get a week down and we recover this area, I would also like to buy that. For now, this is nobody's land for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we should all be treading lightly right now. As you can see, kind of the market as a whole, as we've seen a bit of a downturn as of late. I mean, because Bitcoin's not the only one feeling the pain right now. We've seen Ethereum drop below that $4,000 level, which we hadn't seen in a minute. Solana's been taking a beating the last couple of weeks. It was around 250, now it's below 200. Do you think the retraction in price we've seen for those two are just kind of what we see generally? Bitcoin goes down and then the altcoins just go down a little, even more than Bitcoin does? Or what are you seeing on those charts?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing here, honestly, I think the best overview for this, Hank, you're describing a very good. It's the Bitcoin dominance. Remember when we were here, we said,
Yeah.
hey, next level is here. We reached to this level, and now we're trying to recover it. So if we recover it, it's not more one leg down, but maybe we can see a recovery real quick here, of BTC, at least to this, latest resistance, like to 61%, let's say, more or less, and that would, of course, be more than normal for us to see, Ethereum and Solana heading a little bit, with a step back. But we gotta see how the weekly closes. For me, this week is very important, as well as the months, right? It's happening in confluence.
Yeah, I feel like the whole market right now, like, we got that first rate cut, but that seemed like it was very much baked into a lot of people's minds, and we're just kind of waiting to see if we can expect another one or maybe two as we enter Q4, and that might be the rocket fuel we need to take the next leg up. In the meantime, though, in terms of Bitcoin's dominance? It usually seems to kind of be floating between that 55 to like 65, 70%. Is there a level where if it got too low that we should be concerned, or would that be like the blatant signal of altcoin season blooming late in the summer? What would that mean?
Well, Bitcoin since the beginning of 2025 hasn't gone lower than like 57%, honestly. For me, like a top altcoin season this year would look like till the 54s. That's my purple line, basically, because it was the floor all the way on 2024, and I don't see Bitcoin right now like going on a Bitcoin dominance to 40% like we've seen on 2021 and that craziness, because as we've talked several times in the show, for the folks who lost it, like for me, altcoin season right now is not the same as before. Before you bought anything and it didn't matter, it went up if the market, if the altcoin market was up. I think today you have a more mature market, a little bit more specific market, and not everything runs the same. So
right,
that would definitely
doesn't repeat, it rhymes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Well, Luca, as always, we love and appreciate your time here on the Blockchain Report. Before you go, I know there's people out there that want to hear more of your chart analysis. Tell them where to find you.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope to see the recovery together at Luca at Roxom, and it's always a pleasure to be here, Hank. So thank you for having me, and see you next time.
Sounds good. Have a great weekend, Luca. Always appreciate your time.
Bye.
All right, we're taking a quick break here at the Blockchain Report. We'll be right back after this.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Are you interested in effortlessly growing your Bitcoin portfolio? Of course you are. I mean, I am. The Bitcoin credit card by Gemini earns you Bitcoin back on every purchase. Use it like any credit card. You can buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. All that with no annual fee, and right now, you can grab a $200 Bitcoin welcome bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stack. Just go to Gemini.com to learn more. All right, welcome back. It's time for this morning's bull run. And for those of you not paying attention at home, Bitcoin has officially face planted under 110K. It's now hanging out around that 109K mark. That's down about 3% in the last 24 hours and about 12% off that mid-August high of 124,000. So if you bought the top, congratulations, you're now the proud owner of slightly less Bitcoin wealth than you were before. If Bitcoin stays under 110K, the bears get to cash in their put options and walk away $1 billion richer. If bulls can push it back above that line this morning, that math flips. Right now, the bears are licking their chops. September also has the worst reputation in crypto. After all, it is called Red September for a reason. Year after year, this month shows up like a bad hangover. Traders know it's coming, and yet it still knocks them on their backs. And the fun doesn't stop with options either. Macro news came in swinging too. A strong U.S. jobs report, fewer people filing for unemployment, and GDP revised higher gave the dollar a caffeine boost. Great news for the economy, terrible news for risk assets like Bitcoin. The stronger the dollar gets, the more Bitcoin looks like that friend who insists they're fine while clearly wobbling on a bar stool. Rate cut hopes slipped as well. Odds of an October cut fell from 92 to 85%. Still high, but not exactly the lifeline markets were banking on. Meanwhile, the futures market is basically shrugging. Open interest is still strong at 79 billion, but traders aren't piling in on either side. Or in other words, everyone's too scared to move until the options hammer drops. On the bright side of things, Bitcoin's ETFs did see $241 million of inflows on Wednesday. Somebody's still buying the dip, though whether they're visionaries or gluttons for punishment remains to be seen. And then there's, of course, geopolitics. Reports of Russian jets buzzing over Alaska, ongoing chaos in Gaza, and a looming U.S. government shutdown all add up to investors saying, you know what? Maybe I'll sit this one out. And when investors avoid risk, Bitcoin takes its personality. Over in China, stablecoin demand is looking neutral. Tether's trading at only a slight premium, which basically means that traders are dipping a toe, not diving in. Technically, Bitcoin is balancing on a very wobbly platform right now. The 111K to 112K level is now the floor. Now, if it can hold that by the end of this weekend, Bitcoin could bounce back to that 116K mark. But if it cracks, we're talking 105K, maybe even 90K if panic sellers decide they've had enough of the number go down narrative. But before you start crying into your cold wallet, remember, you got to zoom out here, gang. Analysts remind us that this seasonal dip has happened before, many times before. In fact, 4 out of the last 5 years, September drags. Then October and November light a rocket under Bitcoin. So the script isn't dead, it's just on pause for now. And the long-term crowd hasn't exactly blinked. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong is still calling for $1 million Bitcoin by 2030. Arthur Hayes is even spicier, throwing out $3.4 million by 2028 if governments keep printing cash like, it's confetti or something. So yeah, Bitcoin's having a bit of a rough September, but if history repeats, October could be the month where we stop crying and start bragging again. Until then, welcome to Red September, where over-leveraged traders get wrecked, the dollar acts like it owns the place, and everyone else just keeps refreshing the charts hoping 110K doesn't turn into a pumpkin. And SEC Chairman Paul Atkins was asked the question everyone's thinking, but nobody in Washington really wants to answer, and that is, what about conflicts of interest with Trump world dabbling in crypto? Atkins' answer, if there are conflicts, we'll root them out, set standards and enforce statutes, which is regulator code for calm down, we've got a job to do. The timing isn't random. A New York Times investigation spotlighted World Liberty Financial, the Trump-linked crypto venture right after MGX, a United Arab Emirates-founded firm, invested $2 billion into Binance using stablecoins. Turns out that investment was routed through World Liberty Financial's shiny new USD1
You are fake news.
Stablecoin. Hey, get out of here. I mean, talk about convenient, right? This came alongside reports that the administration approved thousands of U.S. AI chips heading to the UAE. Add those dots together, and you've got the kind of story that gets Georgetown students raising their hands in Q&A sessions. Atkins stressed that the SEC doesn't directly regulate World Liberty Financial. Or translation, he's not touching that tar pit with a 10-foot pole. But he did reiterate the SEC will investigate conflicts where indicated and necessary. What's more interesting is Atkins' actual approach to crypto since replacing former chair Gary Gensler. Gensler loved regulation by enforcement, suing everyone not named Bitcoin. Atkins has been friendlier, however, floating an innovation exemption to fast-track on-chain products and promising it will be implemented by the end of the year. He's also launched Project Crypto to modernize digital asset rules. SEC staff already clarified that most proof-of-stake features don't fall under their remit, and certain liquid staking activities aren't securities either. That's about as close to "we like you guys" as the SEC ever gets. So the split screen is this: political headlines about Trump's family dabbling in stablecoins, and a regulator saying, yes, conflicts will be investigated, but also here's a green light for actual innovation. For Bitcoin, the noise about conflicts doesn't change the math, the friendlier rulebook does. And if Bitcoin price action loves anything, it's clarity. And Strategy, well, their stock has fallen nearly 17% to under $300 now, its lowest level since back in April. Why? Well, Bitcoin slipped about 4% to 109K, and Strategy, as always, underperformed the dip because it's a leveraged proxy for Bitcoin. They hold 640,000 coins worth roughly $70 billion, but the stock's premium to NAV is eroding. Thursday's enterprise value multiple sat at 1.44. That's down from closer to 2 back in mid-July when the stock hit $460. One big culprit was Strategy's July 31st decision to stop issuing equity for more Bitcoin unless the stock traded near $600 or price to NAV was 2.5 or higher. Michael Saylor, there's our buddy, he framed it as protecting common holders from dilution. But markets took it as we're slowing down the rocket fuel. After the backlash, Strategy softened, saying they'd still issue equity when conditions were right, but sales have slowed and accumulation of Bitcoin hasn't matched the first half of 2025. The magic Bitcoin yield effect, where equity sales above NAV by more Bitcoin per share, has cooled off. Investors clearly noticed, and when the stock isn't compounding BTC faster than its share count, that premium shrinks. To add some additional spice, an insider trade hit the tape, and EVP and General Counsel Xiao Wei-ming exercised options for 10,000 shares at $40.46 and sold them the same day at $355, pocketing a cool $3.5 million. This was disclosed back on September 18th, days before Bitcoin tumbled and Strategy shares dropped. Nice timing on that one. He still owns over 12,000 Class A shares worth about $4 million, plus 19,000 perpetual preferred shares that pay fixed dividends. There are still 129,100 options left to vest through 2026. Meanwhile, Strategy kept on stacking. Between September 15th and the 21st, they bought 850 Bitcoin for around $100 million, bringing their total hoard to near 640,000. Bottom line here, gangs, when Bitcoin falls, Strategy falls a little harder, and when premiums shrink, shareholders feel less special. And when executives sell millions right before a slide, Twitter gets really, really loud. We're taking a break, but when we're back, more Blockchain Report coming your way right after this. And we're back. It's time for a little Tales from Hollywood, so let's see what's going on over there. Well, looks like South Park is back with season 27, and episode 5 proves the writers still know how to blow up the line between politics and pure insanity. This week's storyline includes prediction market apps, Benjamin Netanyahu, Brendan Carr at the FCC, JD Vance, Satan, and of course, Donald Trump's unborn butt baby. South Park and elementary kids are obsessed with the new fad, prediction market apps. You've heard of them. It's basically gambling dressed up as a social media platform. You can bet on anything, whether the girls' soccer team wins, whether there's a snow day, or in the most offensive example, whether Kyle's mom will bomb Gaza and destroy a Palestinian hospital. Kyle blames Cartman for that one, but Cartman denies it, leaving Kyle furious enough to storm off. And his search for the culprit eventually brings him to Brendan Carr and the FCC. Carr thinks there's an offensive government app problem and heads to the White House to warn Trump. Meanwhile, Trump is trying to kill his butt baby with Satan, so he doesn't have to give up his lavish lifestyle. But every trap he sets for Satan backfires on Carr. First a rope and greased air trap sends Carr tumbling, then Trump laces a stew with plan B, but Satan refuses to eat carrots, so Carr ends up slurping it all down. Finally, Trump dumps mountains of kitty litter to infect Satan with toxoplasmosis. Once again, Carr blunders in, ending up hospitalized. And in the ICU, JD Vance visits Carr's doctor and hears the bones might heal, but if the parasite reaches Carr's brain, he could lose his freedom of speech. And Vance is thrilled. He tells Carr he wants anyone out of the way who might block his path to the presidency. Back in South Park, Kyle's mom heads all the way to Israel to confront Netanyahu about flattening neighborhoods and wrapping himself in religion as a shield. She yells at him directly, accusing him of killing thousands while hiding behind Judaism. Now, all of this madness came after a delay. See, the episode wasn't ready for its planned release back on September 17th. Trey Parker and Matt Stone both admitted when you do everything at the last minute, sometimes you don't get it done. So fans had to wait until September 24th for all of this chaos, and it comes on the heels of previous bombshells, like the confirmation that Trump really is sleeping with Satan, and yes, Satan is pregnant. Satan even told reporters he's trapped, bound to Trump for several more years because of the pregnancy. Now, South Park had already pulled an earlier episode parodying Charlie Kirk after his death, but that's still streaming on Paramount+. So between prediction apps, Netanyahu, JD Vance scheming in a hospital, and Trump plotting to kill a demonic fetus, South Park is managing to be both outrageous and disturbingly topical because somehow it doesn't feel that far off from reality. It's time for a little AIO. Let's run that stinger, boys. All right, time for a little AIO. Let's see what our robot overlords are up to today. Well, it looks like they've made their way into therapy, so you can forget the couples therapy with your Mr. or Mrs. and I'm using a licensed professional, as a Swiss researcher says the future of saving your marriage is actually arguing with a chatbot. Laura Vowles from the University of Lausanne ran a study where couples used AI to work through conflicts. And apparently 85% of them walked away saying, yeah, I'd do that again. That means people found that fighting with an algorithm is more enjoyable than fighting with their actual partner, which, if you think about it, might explain why Tinder exists. The selling point is impartiality, right? Because when you tell your best friend about your relationship drama, they're gonna take your side. But the bot is Switzerland. Literally. It doesn't judge, it doesn't roll its eyes, and it doesn't remind you that the thing you did at Thanksgiving 3 years ago is unsavory, right? And if things get messy, there's a whole AI supervisor waiting in the wings. That's a second bot programmed to swoop in if the first bot detects any risk. So basically, your marriage now has 2 robots monitoring it, and if things get really bad, an email gets sent to a human researcher who can read the transcript of your doomed relationship. Romance is alive and well, folks. Now, people were surprised at how human the chatbot felt, which raises kind of an awkward question. If the robot feels more human than your partner, is the relationship already over? Now, Vowles thinks this could go mainstream because, let's be honest, people are already trauma dumping their problems into ChatGPT for free. The difference is that ChatGPT isn't trained to be a therapist. It doesn't have guardrails and won't stop you when you start oversharing about that thing from college you swore you'd never tell anyone. Still, the couples in this study said they'd happily use AI therapy again, which means the next time someone says, I'm seeing someone, they might actually mean a chatbot. And if you're wondering how this ties back to Bitcoin, let's be real. Half of crypto Twitter could probably use this right now, because nothing says healthy relationship like explaining to your partner that Michael Saylor is right, the house is mortgaged, and you're hodling until 2030. All right, we taking a break, guys? All right, we're taking a quick break, but we got more blockchain report coming at you, including we have our highly anticipated panel with heavyweights like Preston Pish, Matt Hill, Alex McShane, Borja Martel Stewart, and even Walker America might be joining us in the mix in just a few minutes, so stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. All coming up when we return.
All right, guys, and we're back, and we got a special edition of the Blockchain Report for you today. We are going to be joined by 2 heavyweight guests to talk about one of the most biggest and controversial things going on in the Bitcoin space right now. First, we have the living legend himself, Preston Pish. Preston, how are you? Great to have you back on the show.
I'm doing great. Great to be here. I didn't know that's what we were going to be talking about. So this will be exciting.
Yeah, no, we got some stuff, and we have other things to talk about too, but I know that is one of the big topics of the day right now, and we're certainly excited to have you and your expertise with us on the show. And I think, is Matt Hill available to join us right now too? There he is. Matt, how are you? Great to have you back on the Blockchain Report. How are you been?
Hey, doing good. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, no, the pleasure is all ours. Well, we got a lot to talk about today, guys, and we're going to have some more guests joining us in just a bit. But I think a big topic that's kind of been on a lot of people's minds recently, before we get into like market news and stuff, is I want to start with the big debate in Bitcoin circles as of late. You know, we're talking about Luke Dasher and the Bitcoin Knots controversy. And for anyone out there who hasn't been following, Knots is Luke's fork of Bitcoin Core, the software that most nodes run. The argument is basically over whether Bitcoin should filter out certain kinds of data on chain. And Luke's even floated the idea of a trusted committee that could retroactively alter the blockchain, which has certainly raised some pretty big questions about censorship, consensus, and who really gets to set the rules in Bitcoin. So I'm glad to have you guys here to kind of unpack that with me a little bit. So gentlemen, so we can just kind of start at the beginning here for those in our audience that maybe don't have a lot of familiarity with this. Preston, I would love to start with you. Could you maybe explain to us the fundamental difference between Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Knots, and why does that even matter for everyday Bitcoiners?
I would start off by just saying I think that the core debate, the real what's behind all of this, if you like peel back all the emotions and opinions, and let me tell you, there's a lot of emotion floating around on this topic. But I think that you have in one camp, you have people that are saying that Bitcoin should only be money. Anything beyond money is not what it was intended to be used for. So you have opinions spewing out of that. And then on the other side, you have a lot of engineers that are saying, well, based on how the protocol actually works, you can do these other things, and therefore you should be able to, build on top of that. And your node should automatically filter, or not filter, any of the transactions that are in there, and that it should just pass and relay the information for people that are properly following the rules that actually exist. And so there's a big, riff in the community over those two things. And as a person that looks at Bitcoin and says, I only need it to be money, I don't really need it to be anything other than that. I'm a little bit more empathetic to that culture, but I also can understand why people on the engineering side are looking at it and saying, well, we've got this set of rules and this set of consensus, and as long as you're inside of that, like, I don't know what to tell you. People are playing by the rules that are currently in existence. Therefore, you should be relaying the transactions. And so that's where the debate is going. You got a ton of ideology that's coming out. You have a ton of egos that are coming out, and you have a lot of past history between the core devs and Luke specifically that's coming out. And so as people are maybe approaching this from the fringe and don't understand the historical context, they don't understand where a lot of these people are coming from. It can look like a lot of confusion. It can look like a lot of fear. Fear comes out of not knowing the ground truth of what something actually is and properly defining it. And so a lot of people are hearing all the scuttlebutt, and they're looking at the different people that they've trusted for years, and they're looking at what they're saying, and they're looking at what camp they're in. Mm-hmm. And it's causing, in my opinion, a lot of mass confusion. And then the final thing that I would say is, I think it's a massive time suck based on, like, hey, run whatever node you want. Let's have the debate. Let's have a cordial debate and be kind and respectful to each other, and not name call and be pricks, I think is the other important part.
Yeah, no, it's definitely causing a lot of confusion and a lot of a lot of debates amongst the community here. And to help us break that down, we actually have another guest that'll be joining us. This is Michael Tidwell. He's a developer to help us break this down. Michael, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so we're glad to have you join with us. We're just talking right about this big debate between Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Knots. What are your initial thoughts on what's going on in that arena right now?
So I'm here to keep Matt honest. I've been coming to the conclusion that this is becoming more and more of a legal cultural discussion than anything technical cultural. So I think some of the problems in terms of why this has become such a vast debate of so many different talking points is because you have one side trying to argue tech and one side trying to argue points that are sort of incompatible with that tech with different sort of priorities. You have one side that's trying to make the Bitcoin blockchain more efficient, reduce incentives for mining centralization. And you have one side that's sort of fighting for the heart and soul of the culture of Bitcoin being used as money as their number one priority. So these two things aren't necessarily compatible in terms of if different groups' first priorities. So the idea from the Steelman that I understand it as for Core is, fees are ultimately the filter, and Bitcoin being successful will automatically promote monetary use cases to the top of that list and filter out spam. And the way I see it from the not side of thing is that's not necessarily true. We have to actively, gate and prevent these sort of use cases from, gaining traction and stuff, and be a bit more proactive and retroactive to these things, a bit more, surgically even. So playing a game of cat and mouse is not off the table for Knots versus Core sees that as kludgy, and let's make things clean where ultimately the fees prevent spam and the most valuable use cases automatically float to the top. And let's, in the meantime, make things as efficient as possible. So that's kind of how I see the debate. It's gone into a interesting legal thing where I haven't seen one lawyer, and I'm not saying this doesn't exist, but I haven't personally seen one lawyer back up this idea that people will be on the hook for contiguous bytes, an op return, for instance, of illicit material. Like this is all becoming a legal debate, and especially when you're talking about a situation of almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's if you want to make tooling and you want to make ideas where you can have the tools to gatekeep these things, then you potentially, I've heard some people argue, you lose any sort of idea of safe harbor statuses for these node runners when you actually start to address, legitimize, and build tooling to prevent these things. I don't know the answer to any of this, but that's how I understand the situation right now. But Matt might have differing opinions, so I'll hand it off to other people.
Yeah, Matt, what side of the fence are you on with this?
Hi. First of all, sorry for the venue. I was not supposed to be on the road today, but something came up and I had to be. So if it's a little noisy or, otherwise, I apologize. But so side of the fence, that's a interesting framing, because I don't like how this has emerged into kind of binary positions. I have, from the beginning, tried to break down some of the tribalism in history here and talk about this at the appropriate scope that it deserves, which is really, what, if any, benefit does transaction and mempool policy afford Bitcoin? And once you discuss that, you can discuss how to do it best or at all, depending on whether you think there's a benefit from it. So unfortunately, the second you start talking about, saying, well, transaction relay filtering has some benefits, it becomes okay, that's a knots person, and all the baggage that comes along with that. And so it's really difficult to have a cogent, respectful conversation around this. But we can try. It is quite nuanced, and I don't think that we're going to succeed today in solving world peace and teaching your audience all the details and nuances of this debate. But let me just address those two things as I stated them, without talking about core and knots necessarily, right? Does mempool and transaction relay policy have a place in Bitcoin? Is there a benefit to these capabilities? And effectively what it means, for those who don't know, is that aside from the consensus rules, right? This is a different layer. You can have a transaction that perfectly conforms to consensus. Is there any benefit to enabling node operators to dropping a transaction, refusing to store it locally or forward it to peers, if it conforms to consensus but does not conform to some other personal, political, moral, or religious belief that they have? Is there a benefit to Bitcoin? Okay, and the stance so far since this came about in the very early days of Bitcoin has been yes, that there is a place for this and an important role for it. This is agreed upon by all participants and developers of Bitcoin. The core development team stands very strongly behind the importance of transaction relay policy. There are a number of relay policies currently implemented in Bitcoin Core. One of them being the op return data limit, which is even still going to remain as of Bitcoin Core version 30. But there are many others as well, some so sacrosanct that they would never be considered to be removed because they are so important and so efficacious, such as like the dust limit policy and others that can prevent nodes from being denial of service attacked. Like these are really, really important for security. Now, not all filters are the same, right? So like the op return data limit filter is very different in nature than the dust limit filter, because the dust limit filter is protecting a node from being like taken down. It's a security filter, whereas the op return filter is more of a preferential, this is how we think Bitcoin should be used. It's not a matter of security, right? Like somebody putting a whole bunch of data into a transaction does not make your node insecure, like taking in a ton of transactions that are under the dust limit would. So the question of whether or not there's a place for filters, and does everyone agree on there is yes, there is a place for filters. Everyone agrees that there is. There's no real controversy around that. The question is really around what filters should be available and what are the default settings of those filters. That's really the debate that is taking place. And my stance to this has been that this is not the purview of protocol developers to decide, and they don't want it to be either, right? Like, everyone can also agree on that, which is that it shouldn't be up to the people writing the consensus rules and the essential security features and basic functionality of Bitcoin to decide what I want to drop and not drop from a transaction standpoint as they enter and leave my node. And what's really interesting about this is that when you break it down to another layer, it actually can't be their purview. This isn't a matter of should they be on the hook for implementing new filters, removing old filters, changing defaults. It's more of they can't, because, for example, if I wanted filters that Core did not offer, I could switch to another implementation, right? So Core literally can't stop people from implementing filters that are not offered by Core or removing filters that are not offered by Core. Furthermore, if there was no implementation that allowed me to filter a transaction the way I wanted, let's say, for example, I'm superstitious about the number 10,000, and any transaction that has an output of 10,000 sats, I am going to drop that transaction, right? So somebody hands it to me and I'm just like, oh God, that's evil, and I drop it. Nothing from the Core camp or the Knots camp could prevent me from implementing that filter, either by forking the code and implementing it myself, or I could even stand up a proxy service that sits right in front of my node or right behind my node and drops transactions at will before they even hit the node, right? So that example right there proves really that policy really doesn't belong in the code at all, right? The right way to approach policy is to think about it and relegate it to its proper place, which is absolutely a personal preference social layer of Bitcoin. Okay, it doesn't belong in the code. The Core developers shouldn't be worrying about it. They should delete all the filters, not just op return, get rid of all of them, and let people implement filters dynamically by sideloading them, switch to other implementations, or implement a proxy service. That said, just because it doesn't belong in code does not mean that it has no impact. Okay, so just because I decide to drop any transaction with an output of 10,000 sats, nobody cares. I do that, no effect on the network whatsoever. I'm just some crazy guy on the fringe of society dropping transactions that I disagree with. Doesn't make an effect at all. However, if a vast majority, a super majority, and then some of the network all agree with me that a certain type of transaction should not be propagated through the peer-to-peer network, it does start to have an impact on Bitcoin, the broader technology, monetary, and network. It starts to have an impact. What impact is a really interesting thing to discuss, and we can get into that as to whether or not it is efficacious and to what degree it's efficacious and what the externalities and negative consequences could be, all worthy of discussion. But the point is that if me and everybody else start dropping transactions that have outputs of 10,000 sats, it's going to have an effect on the network for better or worse.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that insight, man. Welcome to the show right now. We have maybe one of the most patriotic men in Bitcoin. We're introducing Walker America. Walker, how are you? Thanks for joining us today. We are, talking about the Knots versus Core debate, and I think it brings a question that every man has had at some point in his life, and it's to fork or not to fork. Where do you stand on things?
Well, I'd say fork your mother if you want fork. And I appreciate anyone who gets that deep cut reference. I'd just like to say it's a pleasure to be here with probably the most patriotic man in Bitcoin, which is Preston Pish. I am a little bit disappointed that Preston's not sporting a handlebar mustache. I've been making this poll request for a long time. I thought there was a lot of good arguments made on my side of the wall here, but Preston apparently just, I don't know, he's just deciding to continue to fork off from me. But
I'm very disappointed there's an A in your name there. I think it should be Walker America, and drop the A, capitalize the M. Like, let's get this everywhere. And by the way, Matt, that was an amazing roll up. I really thought that you did an amazing job rolling that up. But back to you, Walker. Sorry.
Well, boy, come on, guys. I don't want to steal the attention. I'm just here to represent the Bitcoin podcasting community. I see, we already have Preston here, though, so maybe we're all overloaded. I guess we're all podcasters, though, at the end of the day, aren't we? That's really, I think, what this debate comes down to. Whether you're on the Core or the Not side of things, you have somebody to blame. You have a scapegoat, and that is the Bitcoin podcasters. And that's, I think, what we can all rally around.
Yeah, we're the worst. We're the worst, guys.
We
so,
are. Yeah.
Preston, I want to turn to you for this one. So, do you think, why do we need to make room for things like ordinals and inscriptions, or are we like diluting the purpose of Bitcoin as money to begin with? Like, where do you stand on that? I'm still trying to figure out the purpose.
Here's where I stand on it.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate talking about what ifs when we have an environment and a boundary layer that's already been defined. Okay. Mm-hmm. We already know what can and cannot go into a block because the code tells us what that is. And to sit here and whine about whether, oh, I don't like the fact that people can write inscriptions, it's pointless. It's almost like, I'll give you an equivalent. We're all human beings. We live here on Earth, right? For thousands of years, nobody could fly in the air. Okay. And then all of a sudden we figured out how to do that. And we broke what we thought were rules that were, ungovernable. And nobody can fly in the air. Only birds can do that, right? But the fact of the matter is you can if you harness physics and mathematics, and you can do it. Okay. I'm sure there was a certain part of the population that didn't like this when it happened. But you know what you can do about it? Nothing. There's nothing you can do about it because there's certain people out there that say, you know what? I want to get somewhere faster and I am going to fly. So Bitcoin has rules. Those rules are out there, whether you like them or not. You might hate SegWit. You might think that it was the worst thing ever done, but congratulations, it's there. And so I look at the question more from what can I do personally that fits inside of the way I want to operate inside of this protocol. And I can go do it. If I don't like transactions that are 10,000 sats, I can filter them out if I really want to do my homework and figure out how to do that on my node. Everybody else is probably going to look at me like I'm crazy, just like somebody would look at a person saying, oh, I can't believe they're flying. And, I'm definitely not going to fly. I'm going to walk everywhere. You know what? You can do that. You can make these decisions. We're all participating in this system together. So I think, look at what's possible. You can operate. You can do your vote. You can run your node any way you want. I think that there's a lot of emotion in this debate. And I think there's a lot of wasted time in this debate because what people are arguing over and what they're really trying to do is to convince others to run the node the way that they want to run their node. And my biggest frustration in all of this is that it's almost like you're being pigeonholed into one camp or the other, almost like you got to pick which, political party you want to be in. And I just want to sit back and be like, I think both parties are idiots. Like, that's kind of like, my point of view.
Yeah. Michael, what do you think? I want to hear more from you. You said you were going to be keeping Matt honest, so I want to see it in action. What do you got for me?
Well, going back to what Matt was talking about, I would say, and this isn't probably going to be new for Matt, but for the audience or whoever else, the take, so core is sort of core contributors, core supporters, core maintainers are sort of in a situation where they're damned if they do, damned if they don't sort of situation right now, where they're either going to be seen as authoritarian kind of maintainers where they're choosing what knobs are available, #run knobs if you actually want a freedom node, but they're sort of being depicted as these authoritarians that are, hey, we want to take away one of your knobs to configure your node. And then on the other side of that, like I said, they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. The other side of that is they're going to be seen as placating the child, giving them an Xbox controller while daddy plays PS4 or PS5 or whatever. So it's seen as either you're placating them with a useless knob or you're authoritarian and you're taking away a meaningful knob to them. And who are you to tell me how to configure my node, right? So that's sort of like the damned if they do, damned if they don't sort of paradigm that they're dealing with. They're screwed either way. Like either way, they're going to be hated on for making the wrong decision here. They're in a very bad situation, I think. And it's unfortunate, but and I don't think Peter would be upset with me like quoting him, but I'll paraphrase. If you can't in good faith give someone ability to configure your node, you shouldn't allow it. And this goes back to more or less a general software paradigm where you don't want to give people unnecessary, noisy configurations for their software because that leads to undesirable behaviors or unknown behaviors that can't be in good faith guided from the people making it. Now, whether you agree with that or not is the debate, right? So, but this is, I want to make sure I'm steel manning. That is how they're perceiving the situation. They are trying, in my opinion, in very good faith, trying to do the right thing. And they are struggling to figure that out because they've already sort of backtracked on removing in version 30, deprecating, and who knows if it even will get deprecated at this point because of all this drama. But and even Mike Schmidt taking some PRs and proposing this as of 4 days ago to even backtrack further. I mean, they're obviously listening, whether we want to believe that they're listening hard enough or not. They are indeed listening, whether, so you could arguably say that this campaign is effective because they are backtracking, but it's never going to be good enough. It's going to be like white guilt. You're never going to be able to undo what has already been done, or whatever the Kamala quote is, right? So it's something where, it's just a bad situation for everyone. So everyone loses kind of thing. It's like a very weird thing. #run knobs. Everyone can be a winner.
Mm-hmm. And guys, I want to kind of talk a little bit more about Luke while we still have Preston here. I know he's got to go soon. He leaked this idea of a trusted multi-sig committee that could retroactively alter the blockchain, which kind of sounds like heresy to a lot of Bitcoiners out there. So this one's for Matt. Like, I think you kind of touched on it earlier. Is there a world where that makes sense? And how would we even go about it?
So I'm only roughly familiar with the discussion. Mm-hmm. Here's my understanding of it. Is the way you put it is probably not accurate. I think what it proposes to do is to allow some committee or something, some centralized or federation of people to inspect content that is on the chain, and then retroactively swap it with a zero knowledge proof, effectively removing the data from the chain and replacing it with a cryptographic proof such that people can still that node can still validate the state of the system and the blockchain on a go forward basis. So it does not we'll call it like undo transactions. There's no possibility of like reversing a transaction. It's an attempt to kind of remove data. Now, to be clear, Luke did not propose this. I believe he was having a private discussion with somebody.
It was leaked.
About what are the technical possibilities, limitations, and social implications of something. I think it is an extremely dangerous thing to start to condemn people for private ideation. That's like an extremely dangerous Orwellian type of approach to things. Like, I've had some horrible ideas in my time that I have run by people privately, and am embarrassed about the fact that I even thought about it. But the only possible way to get to good ideas is to have a ton of bad ones first. So I think that this was presented in very bad faith. Luke never publicly proposed anything. I don't like the idea. I think it's a bad idea. The fact that he didn't propose it publicly probably means that he thinks it's a bad idea, or at least saw some limitation. I don't know, man. I'm not Luke. I just know that this fell very quickly into the let's pounce on any news that makes the other team look bad type of journalism. And I think it was not done in very tastefully. That's all.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like I said, this was technically leaked. So yeah, he didn't come out and say this, and we all have bad ideas behind closed doors. I think we're all guilty of that. Preston, I know you got to get going soon. So before we let you go, do you have any final thoughts on this topic before we wrap you up for the day?
Not really. I think Matt has had some great explanations on this, and has a very balanced point of view. And I think if there's one thing that we have seen in this is the lack of balance and the lack of everybody's just emotionally charged. And I think that that's causing a lot of issues for people to wrap their head around, like the core arguments and what's being discussed. The fact of the matter is we have software that's out there that you have to, comply with in order to get something into a block. If you mine the block, you can pick whatever you want transaction wise to put into that block, whether people like that or not. the configuration of individual nodes is what this is, all these arguments are about. And you have a lot of people that are just posturing to try to convince others to run their node the way that they're running theirs. And regardless of what that is, you're going to have a bifurcation. You're going to have a bunch of different people that want to filter or run the node however they want. And I think the key takeaway is run a node, make the decision for yourself, take that autonomy and that sovereignty into your own hands, and run Bitcoin however you want to run it. And if somebody's trying to tell you that you got to pick this or pick that, in my opinion, is the fool's errand. Like, run something, stand behind it for whatever reasons you've got, and participate in the network, because that does make it stronger. And I would try to seek out people like Matt Hill, Tidwell, extremely smart on this area, just in technicality of Bitcoin alone, in any type of regard. Find people that have differing opinions so that you can come to your own opinion and takeaway. But find people that aren't emotionally charged or being held up by deep, intense ideology, and pit the ideas against each other, and then make your own decision.
And maybe don't claim that people who run a different software than you are trying to enable CSAM. That might be a good place for us to start here, just as a
amen.
As a starting point for folks. I agree with you, Preston, though, and I think that's really important. It's like, and Tidwell said this on we did a show together recently. Your policy, your mempool policy doesn't make you a different Bitcoiner. Your consensus rules do, but your mempool, your relay policy does not. We're all still Bitcoiners here, and I think that that's a really important thing to remember. We have larger enemies without than we do within, and I bet those larger enemies without are just tickled pink that we have spent an ungodly amount of man hours debating this ad nauseum, and it has literally gotten basically nowhere, because ultimately it was framed wrong from the beginning, right? But yeah, I'd just like to say, Preston, before you go, you would look great with that handlebar mustache.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Well,
Every chance I get, Preston, I'm poking away at you.
Oh, I'm getting more out.
There we go.
Oh boy. Well, Preston, we'll let you get out of here. As always, thank you so much for your time
Thank
and
you,
joining
guys.
us today. It's always great having you on the show.
Absolutely. Great
Cheers.
sharing the stage with you all.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys. All right, so guys, we lost Preston, but this discussion continues on. I want to go to Michael for this one again. Mike, do you think that, like, they talk about this illicit content that's on chain as kind of an argument of being like a real technical threat? Like, I am not as knowledgeable as you and Matt specifically on this. Why do people care that this stuff is on there in the first place? Can you break that down for us in layman's terms a little bit for me?
So this is kind of highlighting what cheekily Walker was getting at, that there is sort of, it got a bit weird. I don't know when, a couple of weeks ago or whatever. I would say mainly spearheaded by people like Mechanic and Crater that were talking about contiguous bytes being more detrimental. There supposedly is already a ton of illicit material in the Bitcoin blockchain. The Steelman for knots. Now, this is, I'm going to get enemies both on core and on knots, but I will Steelman knots from the leaders, which I consider to be people like Jason and Luke Dash Jr. The Steelman, as I understand it, and I don't think I'm misrepresenting anybody, is when CSAM, which I believe is a new term for literally everyone except lawyers, when that was in the Bitcoin blockchain, it was not legitimate and we did not condone it. However, with this change of op return, we are now condoning it, and it is now illicit material subject for sanctioning, stuff like this. So this is a take that I haven't seen. I said this at the very beginning. I haven't seen one lawyer back up this claim. I think this is the crux of the threat, not necessarily the ideology and the debate of making Bitcoin money, but in terms of, quote, the biggest threat for this change. And I'm not taking anyone out of context here. The biggest threat for this change is this idea that we are legitimizing illicit material as it comes in now. So I don't know what you want to do with that information. I don't think a lot of people that support knots necessarily hold that to be their steelman, but you should at least know that you're a second, third, fourth level sort of cargo culting if you don't also share this opinion away from the original idea of why this is important and what the perceived biggest threat is. Okay. Mm-hmm. I am very interested to see if a lawyer is willing to put their neck out there to say this is legit and we no longer have safe harbor ideas, whatever. But I also see and am very confused that it almost seems like there's some sort of push to try to legitimize tooling around this, which then would legitimize everything about what they're talking about, like a self-fulfilling, like dystopic prophecy. And it's not really good when I see Adam Beck tweet out like, oh yes, I've heard rumors that, you know, people have been reaching out, you know, to pools to try to support some of these ideas or see if there's interest. So I know that wasn't necessarily answering your direct question, Hank, but that's sort of the way I understand this situation and how I'm perceiving it. So would be really interested to see if someone else has a different take.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing with us, Matt. And we're going to have a different take actually joining us right now on the show. Please welcome to the panel. We got Borja, Martel, Seward. Borja, how are you? Thanks for joining us today.
What's up, guys? Pleasure to be here. I was listening, very interesting, everything that we're talking about. So happy to be here today.
Yeah, Borja, well, we got you. So we're talking about this knots versus core situation. Where do you stand on all of this currently?
Look, this is like, I think that the hard fork thing, potential proposal, it's a bit way too extreme. We've seen this in the past. I mean, like, if anything like this happens, I mean, it's actually good for holders in the sense of financially good. Like, we'll be able to get an airdrop and just sell it. I think that it's not good overall for Bitcoin to be like so divided. But that's the beauty about Bitcoin as well, right? Yeah, I just think, Hank, that in general, I like to do things for the right reason. And for me, at the end of the day, I really don't understand if today we're like in an ego kind of battle, or if we're actually in a real technical discussion, because of the technicalities and so on that we're discussing. If you actually get like very in the thing, like for example in the past, like the thing about the relayers and so on, at the end of the day, like in my opinion, and in my opinion, based on several technical experts, like there is, regarding the relayers and so on, like what happened a couple of months ago, the technical difference wasn't that huge or insane, at least like today, maybe in the long term. So sometimes I feel like, you know how governments many times they just do public construction just because they are governments and they need to show that they are building stuff, right? And it's like their proof of work. Sometimes I'm afraid that maybe in the developer community we're in some sort of thing like that, where we're like building as our proof of work that we are builders. But again, sometimes I'm a bit worried if we are actually working to actually improve the network, or if we're actually like in the middle of a ego standout between certain characters. So it's a bit tough for me to really say. Then when I ask technical people that truly understand the underlying stuff and so on, the best technical people I know and the ones who I admire the most, really about some of the things that we're discussing, they don't care as much. So I don't know, what can I tell you? It's a little bit what I see.
Yeah. Walker, I was hoping this one's for you. So Luke himself has a history of being a brilliant coder, but he also has this reputation for kind of social volatility. I think he lost like 200 Bitcoin. It's kind of operational security thing. So it begs the question, like, how much should things like that factor into how seriously the community takes a project like this from him, you think?
I think that's a fair question. I personally think it's the most important to debate the ideas and not the people behind them, right?
Fair enough.
We should be able to debate ideas on their merits alone. Now, if you want to take into consideration, as you're looking at it, the totality of a particular argument, take into consideration a person's past actions and whether or not there may be certain motivations that have informed their opinions in the present based on the past, that's fair. But I think that we can actually have this conversation without even needing to go into past, let's say, past actions or past failures, whatever they might be. For me, this article that has really blown up on the Rage, to me, the most interesting part of it, which I haven't actually seen talked about as much, but there's been a big focus on the hard fork. Have I been complicit in contributing to that dialogue? Absolutely. Have I done some trolling? Sure. What do you expect? I'm a literal court jester and came into this space dressing up in wigs with my wife, making satirical videos. So if you don't think I'm going to troll you, you've got another thing coming. But here's the thing, like, in all seriousness here, the thing that popped out to me was the part of the message exchanges. And now let me take a step back. You can think what you will about the veracity of these messages. I believe them to be true based on a couple of different conversations I've had offline, let's say. Now, and I also haven't seen Luke deny these. He said that the tone of the article is fake news. He has never once said, even though given multiple opportunities, that the messages themselves are fake. Now, we can also debate how, leaking these messages, is that something that should be done? Matt brought that up earlier. I think that's a fair conversation as well. But the moral of the story is that they're out there now, right? They are out there. And the one that stuck out to me was Luke responding to a message that said, even using knots, if I configure big limit, then what's the difference? And Luke responds, the difference is that's only you, not the whole network. It only becomes a sanctioned data storage method if it's broadly accepted as such. Which to me, unless I'm reading this wrong, is just an admission that filters don't work unless they have wide, broad adoption. Now he's talking about the flip side of that, right? That unless a lot of people are adopting Core V30, it's not a sanctioned method. But the argument is very easily deconstructed from there to be filters don't work unless you have very, very broad or almost total adoption of them, right? Because this analogy that's thrown around a lot, the fence analogy, you have a fence, and just because somebody can get over your fence doesn't mean you shouldn't have a fence. Well, it's like, but that's, first of all, it's a bad analogy. And also in this case, if one person can get over the fence, and I'm stealing from Tidwell here, because again, he brought this up on my fantastic podcast, the Bitcoin podcast. Even if one person gets over the fence in this case, then the point is moot. And this is an admission from Luke that unless you have broad adoption of either of these, the point is moot. Like in his case, he's saying, unless you have broad adoption, really broad adoption, then this isn't a sanctioned data storage method, because we'll be able to say, look, only some people, only a fringe people do this. By the same token, unless you have total acceptance of knots, everybody's running knots, or knobs. If they want, they can run knobs if they want maximum configurability, which is great. But if everyone's running knots, okay, maybe you can get to this desired state of there's no potential for anything bad to ever end up on the blockchain. But if one person gets around that, the point is actually moot. And people, this whole CSAM issue has been like just brought up ad nauseum. And I think it's been brought up. It's a fair concern. Like none of us here, we've got a lot of dads here. None of us want that, obviously. To suggest that people who are running a different software implementation than you do want that kind of filth running on their node or in the blockchain, I mean, that's a disgusting thing to claim and to try and push on people. That's really gross, and that's the kind of thing that governments do, right? How do you want this wrapped? Do you want it wrapped as counterterrorism, or do you want it wrapped as saving the children? Like this is the government's playbook, right? And I think it's a little bit rich right now that I'm seeing, a lot of people say, oh, all of these attacks on Luke that are coming out now, this is, getting ridiculous. This is libel. This is slander. This is fake news. This is a misrepresentation. This is an attack. Luke is a Bitcoin developer, and like this is manipulation that's meant to outrage and stoke hatred against Luke. This is this is unfair. And it's like, well, thank goodness that none of the Knots runners have done anything remotely like this, right? Thank goodness. I mean, they sure haven't slandered or libeled core devs, right? That hasn't happened. They sure haven't, had people like Luke or his followers call Core V30 an attack on Bitcoin, and those developers who are proposing Core V30 to be attackers on Bitcoin. They definitely haven't suggested that Core has ulterior motives or that they're funded by maybe bad actors or they're on the take from something. They definitely haven't suggested that Core is a psyop. They definitely haven't suggested, Mechanic and his disciples. They haven't gotten so hyperbolic to say that, if you're pushing these changes, then you want to have, children exploited on the blockchain. We haven't seen any of that. They would never do something so insane to say that, if you're running this different software than me that I don't like, you're a spammer, you don't think Bitcoin is money, and you are personally complicit in putting this evil and disgusting material on the blockchain. We haven't seen any of that, right? Oh, no, wait, we have. So all of this, these attempts to take the moral high ground that I see now are just a little bit ridiculous, because we have been fighting in the mud, so to speak. There's just been a bunch of, what's that old saying, like don't wrestle with the pigs, you're going to get dirty. This has just been such a colossal time suck. And I think that at the end of the day, it's like people have been a bit misled because they've been told that if they run this different software implementation, they're somehow better people. They're somehow better Bitcoiners. They somehow have a version of the software that makes them morally superior, and that anyone who doesn't have that, doesn't think Bitcoin is money, is a spammer, is a scammer, wants to attack Bitcoin, wants to exploit children in the blockchain. And all of these things are just patently false. The other thing that's patently false, as you see that Luke has literally admitted in these messages, again, you can believe the veracity of them or not, but this is a fact. The filters don't actually achieve their stated end goal. Like, if the filters worked, they would work, right? And people will come back, the other side, saying, well, if the filters don't work, then why are you even worried? Why are you even arguing? Why do you hate Knots so much? And it's like, first of all, guys, I'm probably not going to upgrade to Core V30 when it comes out. I don't even know what implementation of Core is running on my node right now. You know why? Because I use it very rarely. Because because Bitcoin node implementations are backwards compatible. That's literally like the whole point, is that you don't have to upgrade. And yes, there are some security patches that you should put in, whatever. But this whole conversation has, I'm not saying this one specifically, just in general, broadly, has been just blown so out of proportion. I'm not the most technical guy in the world, right? I've done my best to study this as best that I can, to look at the opinions of both sides. And there's a lot of friends that I have, dear friends now, that I've met through this magic internet money on both sides of this. I don't think either of those sides are bad people. I think genuinely that most people having these debates are coming from a place of they care about Bitcoin. They want Bitcoin to succeed. We all think Bitcoin is money, right, guys? That's one of the dumbest arguments I've seen. So you don't think, of course I do. I use Bitcoin as money every single day. Do you? Like, not you guys, again, generally here. So I've been ranting for a little while. I'll take a breath here and perhaps a drink of water. But I think it's really important to remember that if you were a rogue state actor, if you were a hostile actor, and you wanted to have Bitcoiners and Bitcoin developers on both sides of this waste as much time as possible, get as far in the weeds as possible, sow as much dissent and discord and distrust as possible, what would you do? It would probably look a bit something like what's happening right now. And I'll end on that.
Yeah. Matt, I would love to get your take on this. So we're having this debate between Knots versus Core. So my question is, do these types of dialogues actually strengthen Bitcoin by stress testing it? Or are they just kind of distractions from the real priorities like scaling and Lightning and other things? What are your thoughts?
I'm not going to rank the, priorities for Bitcoin developers or the broader Bitcoin ecosystem. I think there's a lot of problems to be solved, ranging from security and privacy to, scalability and adoption, financialization, monetization. Everyone's fighting on different fronts. I mean, Bitcoin is a seismic shift and has a lot of implications for society that drags along with it. For banks, insurance companies, governments, all of society is potentially restructured by Bitcoin and the movement around it. So tons of problems to solve. I think, this is probably lower, much much lower on the hierarchy than some other things that I would love to see people return focus to. But you can't ignore the elephant in the room either. Like, this has become a big problem culturally, right? Like Walker said, there's good people on both sides here, and we're not as productive as we should be at the moment. Working together, we're going to be much stronger than working against each other. I personally don't believe this is some nation state psyop to divide the Bitcoin community. I don't think they're that smart. I think this is confusion at the core. I think that people are having the debate at the wrong layer, as I mentioned earlier. I think that the debate around relay and mempool policy is conflated because inherently, and I'll sort of rephrase this as I did before, inherently, naturally, by the laws of nature, filters, these policies, exist outside of the code, right? It does not matter what the code says. Somebody can either implement or remove a filter extrinsic to their node, right? I could put a different software service in front of my node and filter transactions. There's literally no way to stop it, right? There's no way to stop people from making individual choices about what they will and will not relay. Once you acknowledge that fact, you can then say, okay, well, the reason everyone's arguing right now is because these filters and knobs that inherently exist, irrevocably exist outside of Bitcoin are in fact in Bitcoin. And so somebody is deciding what the knobs are and what the defaults of those knobs should be. And so long as they are in that position, everyone's going to fight, right? This debate doesn't involve Bitcoin proper. It's not Bitcoin, it's how people use Bitcoin. Those are two different things. What Bitcoin is, literally, is a decentralized truth machine for storing information in an immutable way, okay? And the way that people use that machine can vary from arbitrary data storage, which cannot be stopped forever, no matter how many consensus changes you make. You could hard fork till you're blue in the face, and people will always be able to encode arbitrary data into the blockchain and into the UTXO set, okay? There's an infinite number of ways to encode information to look like something else in order to get past a filter. There's no way to relegate Bitcoin to monetary use case only, ever, no matter what, especially at the consensus layer, right? At the consensus layer, like we'll call it Bitcoin proper, like the kernel of Bitcoin is even more agnostic, okay? However, there is a social layer to Bitcoin, right? Like, for example, I could say there's a park, and it is absolutely within the laws of physics for me to go to that park and do things that people don't want me to do in that park, okay? Like, I can go and do that. But there are things like signs and security, patrollers and the community at whole that can kind of mitigate those things to a degree. And that is the layer of the network where policy exists. It is the social implicit consensus, not the explicit consensus of Bitcoin itself. And what we have done, because in the early days, everything existed in the code and everyone was a node runner, was using Bitcoin, they got intermingled. And so if you want to get these things into their proper spheres, you need to disentangle them. We need to get policy out of consensus. We need to get policy out of the code. And then what Michael was saying earlier, he's saying that the core developers are between a rock and a hard place here, right? If they appease the knots crowd and start adding more filters, then they're going to get, crucified by the other side, which I believe is correct. They should, right? They should not do that. Number two is if they just ignore the people who are saying, hey, we want these social powers to be able to influence the way that Bitcoin is used by and large, right? Not saying people can't do other things, but it would have an influence, so to speak. If they ignore those people, then they're also going to get condemned. And the result of that is going to be people moving away from their code, which I think is a bad thing. I would love to see everyone using core. Or, like I said, just implementing layers that, sit just outside the node. Like, there's no way to stop filterers from filtering, right? Just like there's no way to stop somebody from encoding arbitrary data into Bitcoin, there's no way to stop filterers. Like, you can't stop anyone from doing anything that they want. So it's important, I think, to acknowledge this. And the way out, in my opinion, and I've already talked with Michael about this, is if core, right, the rock and the hard place, right, the crack through those is to be like, we're not going to make these decisions anymore. We are not going to decide which knobs are available and what the defaults are. Instead, we're going to give you a toolkit that allows you to build whatever knobs you want. And knowing, as Walker said, that none of them matter. None of them matter unless everyone does them. And even then, there's potentially inefficacious scenarios and negative side effects to the network. But that's a different conversation. That is because again, people can filter whether you like it or not. So we should definitely talk about the scenarios where if and when people filter, what is going to happen for better or for worse, right? And knowing in that conversation that you can't possibly stop it. So I think the proper solution here is roughly in line with the BIP, the Bitcoin Improvement Proposal that Aiden submitted to the Bitcoin mailing list a few days ago, which removes all the filters from Bitcoin Core, all of them, op return and every other one, and replaces them with a modular system, which could be trivially implemented in Bitcoin. We're going to do the PR, write the code. Core developers don't have to do anything. We could write the code to do this. It allows them to drop all the filters, never concern themselves with filters again for as long as they live. These debates can happen at the social layer where they belong. I can implement a filter that gets rid of outputs with 10,000 sats. Luke can implement a filter that limits op return, and none of them will matter unless we are able to garner like 90+% social consensus, and then it'll start to have an influence on the network, and then we can deal with the downstream side effects of that afterwards. My point is that what I just described can't be stopped anyway. So I think it would be a great move for Core to acknowledge this reality, provide the tooling, the knobs for people to write their own scripts and do their own tooling, and get out of the debate. Go back to building cool shit and working on consensus. I think that's the solution. I think it's a non-starter, not only based on the feedback that it received, but even before Aiden put that up, I was like, this isn't going to happen, man. Like, it's too hot. It's immediately going to be interpreted as a like pro filterer thing. It's not. It's just trying our best to acknowledge reality and build systems that navigate that reality responsibly. Okay. That is the intent of it. It's not being interpreted that way. It's not going to get traction. The PR, if Aiden decides to code it up, probably will not get merged. I'm not optimistic. But that said, with all that said, just like Walker and everybody else here, we're out. I'm done with this. Like we're not even a Bitcoin company. We're a sovereign computing company. We just want people to be able to run whatever software they want. We care about Bitcoin. We have opinions about Bitcoin. We have been, I think, wrongly interpreted as being like not supporters, right? We think there's a place and a role for filters and that it's extrinsic to the code. And just by saying that, we hate Core and we're in total support of Luke. That's the nature of this conversation. That's how it's emerged, and I don't think it's good, and I don't want to be a part of it anymore. So, yeah, we did our best, right? Between Aiden's BIP and me talking about it and helping him put that together, and potentially helping with the PR if it does get any attention, or if it does get any support. I think that was us putting our best foot forward. It's like, hey, here's a proposal that we think is entirely neutral, acknowledges reality, gets Core what they want, gets the filterers what they want, gets the anti-filterers what they want, and moves the entire filter battle to a social political layer extrinsic to Bitcoin.
Are you sure you're not a Bitcoin podcaster and not a software hardware engineer? Because that was a heck of a rant there, Matt.
Thanks, Walker.
That was outstanding.
I'd love to come on sometime.
You know the door's always open. We go through this every time.
No, you gotta tell me when.
All right, we'll talk after this. Yeah.
Okay.
So, guys, to my understanding, and I don't have quite the breadth of knowledge that y'all do about this, but it sounds like this is something that likely would never come into fruition anyway. So it begs the question for me, why is this so hotly debated? Is there like a potential long-term risk to this that people are concerned about? Like if it gains traction, it could undermine trust in Bitcoin's development as a whole? Or Michael, would you be able to shine any light on that for me? I'm just, a little pleb compared to you guys, so I appreciate your insights.
Sure. You mind if I respond to Matt real quick?
Please do. Yes.
So, I think philosophically, it's hard to argue against what Matt was saying. Just want to point that out. I do want to say that the whether it's a fence analogy or a park analogy or whatever, we just have to remember that this isn't a park in your city. This is a worldwide park that we are going to be sharing with people even in Canada, in Australia, in India, in China, Africa, Asia, etc. And we all know what those people do that we don't like. You know what I mean? Whatever that is. And it's just, I think philosophically Matt is right, but I think in practicality, it's just going to be kind of like what you were sort of alluding to. I don't know if it was intentional, but sort of like none of this stuff probably will end up mattering. And if it does get super wide consensus, then at that point it does matter. But that is at the point where we're all agreeing on some pretty darn core values of something. And I believe that the main things that we're going to be agreeing on in terms of those things are going to be things that will cause technical harm, not subjective cultural harm to the nodes. So if you do find DOS vectors and things that will actually harm your bandwidth or, whatever it might be, quadratic hash, kind of computation kind of stuff. I mean, these are things that I think are going to be pretty broadly in consensus. I am curious to know if there will ever be a broad 10,000 sat output consensus, right? Sort of idea that will ever take off, or something equivalent to something subjective like that. Did you want to say something? Go for it.
I want to respond to that point real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
So I personally, because this is a global phenomenon, you're talking different cultures and different incentives, different, the business incentives, the cultures, like Bitcoin is for everyone, right? We're talking about global money here. The idea that the world at scale is going to reach 90% on filtering a particular type of transaction is incredibly unlikely, I think, unless, like you said, it is an acknowledged denial of service attack vector. Like this is a security patch, and then everyone does it, right? The scenario that I will lay out here, that again, I'm not going to attach probabilities to it, but it's a scenario, okay? And it's one of those things where it's like, you hope you don't have to use this thing, but if you have to use it, it's really good that you have it, okay? It's kind of like owning a weapon, right? So let's say that there does emerge a well-funded, prolonged spam attack, okay? Where you're talking like nation state level, money printer level funded activities to just slam Bitcoin with fake pub keys, witness discounts, op returns, bloat the chain, bloat the UTXO set, spike the fees, hit it. And not for a day, not for a week, but for a couple of years. Make it fucking unusable. Destroy this thing. Just brute force spam attack it, okay? Not saying this is going to happen. This could have already happened if it was going to happen, or maybe it's going to happen in the future. Don't know. How do you mitigate it? Can't be done at consensus. Can't be done with it, right? You need a quick way to rapidly respond to different spam techniques that can be quickly adopted around the world without having to upgrade the node. That's the key. Because if it requires a new version, if Bitcoin v35 is what you have to download and update to in order to get the latest mitigation filters against these attacks, it's too slow. You will not get the requisite number of downloads that are necessary to parry the attack. You need a way to rapidly distribute a new filter and have everybody sideload it into whatever version of Bitcoin they are currently running, right? So again, I don't know if this is worth building this tool, right? I don't know if it's worth it, but that is a scenario where I think 90% of the world could get on board with a particular filter in order to stop it. And here's the thing, is that whatever entity is carrying out this attack could very quickly change the manner in which they're embedding data, right? They could hit op return first, and then they could go to witness, and then they could start doing pub keys that are of a particular decoding algorithm, right? And so you have to be able to dynamically and quickly just ship these filters and parry the attacks one after another, right? Unless, no, maybe I'm wrong, but that's.
Can I just say that at the end of the day, Aiden's PR has a home in Bitcoin knobs. I just want to make sure,
yes,
at the end of the day, we at least know that we're going to have an implementation running this. All right.
Hashtag run knobs.
It's not going to happen, guys. We're not coding this thing up. The goal. If there's any real, we have other shit to do. If it gets attention, and Core has any interest in getting this into Bitcoin Core, we'll probably code it up. Otherwise, we're not going to do it.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. Pressure Start9 into a business change direction, like, new product idea for Start9. Tweet it out. Start9 run knobs. I mean,
how many physical knobs are on the Start9, by the way, and why aren't there more?
There's a power button and an Ethernet port. You want
There's
more
actually
knobs?
No knobs on it right now.
You want lights, don't you?
Well, just knobs. It doesn't actually matter if the knobs do anything. Just like you should have a few on there, just because then people can twist them. They can feel like they're doing something.
Sure.
I think, maybe just refab your whole line.
I want a gradient switch that helps me clear out the memory physically.
Ooh,
on the RAM.
The memory?
Yeah, I want like a magnet that helps me zero out all the RAM in case, for security as a.
All right, guys, we're off the rails.
Yeah. Well, guys, we've really talked about this Knots Core debate for a while. I think we got a lot of other things that are maybe higher on the priority list, but I certainly appreciate everyone's insight and expertise on this. And Matt, I know you have to go soon. So before we let you go, are there any final thoughts you want to leave us with today? You've done a pretty great job already. So if you need to bounce, we'd understand.
No final thoughts.
No final thoughts. Okay. Well, we certainly appreciate your time and expertise on this matter. You made a lot of really good points today, and we thank you for sharing those with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Chatting, Matt. See you.
All right, guys, let's pivot away from this a little bit. I want to talk more about the present state of things right now. We've seen Bitcoin take a pretty significant dip in the last couple of days, below 110. As we're closing Q3 in just a couple of days now. Historically, this is a weak quarter for us, Q4, usually Bitcoin's strongest. So, Borja, this one's to you. Do you think this seasonal trend still matters in today's institutional-driven market, or are we going to be seeing things a little bit differently going forward, or what are your thoughts?
My thought, Hank, is that 22 months ago, we were at $15,000. Now we are at 110. That's a lot. That's a long way up. I think that this cycle is not over, but I'm not on the side of let's say fundamentally that we continue on the 4-year cycle. Like this is the bottom after the halving. This is the top after the halving. But I do not think neither that this is going to be like a super extended bull market and so on. I think this is just a normal dip. I think that this year we're still bullish, but I think that things can change quickly. I'm still not worried at all whatsoever. This is just a normal dip, and I think that we will still have legs up. NFA, of course.
Yeah. Walker, what are your thoughts? Are we going to be setting things up like we have toward the end of this year and then things are going to crash in 2026? Or are we expecting maybe a longer, prolonged bull market as a result of these, favorable tailwinds and institutional adoption that we've been seeing?
I think in 4 years, Bitcoin will be worth more infinitely printable fiat cuckbucks than it is today. And that's the depth of my analysis. I think that over any meaningful time frame, Bitcoin goes up and to the right. I'm not somebody who focuses on the short term, let's say, price action too much. I would only say that, man, isn't it wild that we view Bitcoin like crashing, dipping to under 110,000 infinitely printable fiat cuckbucks? Like the fact that we're even talking about that as a dip or a crash. What an amazing thing. As Borja said, not so long ago, we were down in the depths of the bear. It was in the 15, 16K range. It was over. You had all of the Bitcoin fudsters coming out of the woodwork. Peter Schiff is throwing parties where he's showering everyone with gold flakes. They're eating gold tacos and just, roasting Bitcoin's demise. And then, here we are, right? Where Bitcoin continues to do what Bitcoin does best, which is melt people's faces when they least expect it. I haven't been around Bitcoin that long, but that is one thing that I have definitely learned. You know, the old adage of it's time in the market, not timing the market, is really important here, I think, for folks especially getting in. And that's why I recommend that folks just, you know, keep it simple, stupid, and dollar cost average in and stack a few sats here as you can with the money you cannot afford to lose and that you want to gain purchasing power. And remember that in the grand scheme of things, we are still incredibly early. $2 trillion asset, $1,000 trillion worth of global asset value. We're at 0.2%. We are just getting started. Bitcoin is going to rip your face off and wear it as a mask when you least expect it. Be prepared for that. Stay humble and stack sats, to paraphrase Odell, or actually just to quote him directly. But I can do that now because he's not really on X anymore. He's over on Nostr. So, and that's where I need to head to next, actually, for a Nostr only live stream with the Bitcoin Bugle guys. We're going to be talking about journalism. So, it's very important stuff we've got to get to. But I appreciate this.
We appreciate
this is a great conversation because I think it's important for people to remember that we're all Bitcoiners here, right? You know, it's not like what kind of Bitcoiner are you? It's like, no, you're a Bitcoiner. So, and if you want to, one more shill, if you want to get a taste of what Bitcoin may look like in the year 2249, there's a first of its kind Bitcoin Dungeons and Dragons campaign that is premiering in like 2 hours. It's called Quest of Keys. It's organized by Dungeon Master Tatum Turnup, and it's going to be pretty fantastic. Myself, my beautiful wife, Carla, Lynn Alden, Mags, Stephen Lubka. Did I already say Lynn Alden? I'll say Lynn Alden again. She does a lot of the heavy lifting there. But yeah, so if you want, check out at Quest of Keys for some lighthearted Bitcoin fun and a peek at what Bitcoin may look like in the year 2249.
Well, I love some Tatum Turnup. That guy's got a great sense of humor for the space. So we'll let you go, Walker. As always, we certainly appreciate your time, insights, and expertise, and for being a patriot. And
my best.
Enjoy the rest of your day, my friend.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Bye, Walker.
All right, guys. So now we're turning this little thing into a bit of a menage, and we're going to switch it up a little. Michael, excuse me. This one's for you. You know, this has been an interesting cycle for Bitcoin. Volatility right now is 5-year lows. 3-month realized volatility is like 29-30%. So it begs the question, like, is Bitcoin, do you think it's really maturing into like more of a boring macro asset, or is this maybe the calm before the next breakout? What are your thoughts?
I'm definitely of the opinion that, you know, Bitcoin has so much upside. I mean, I think Walker wasn't bullish enough. I think Bitcoin doesn't go up and to the right. I think it goes up and to the left. It's 1 o'clock. But I mean, I think we're, you know, people are asking me, oh, is it too late? This kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, I mean, you still have 100x easy, in my opinion. I mean, I might be naive, but I think, you know, I know you're saying, like, is this the calm before the storm? I don't know. I think there could be a lot of periods of quote unquote calmness, but I mean, I'm still of the opinion that it could be any other week, any other Sunday. You know, you can have that 100K God candle, whatever people are describing. I mean, you're not going to be able to time it. No need to trade hodl and build. I mean, that's why a quick shill. That's why I run TabConf. You know, it's a builders conference where we build on Bitcoin and Bitcoin adjacent technology. So, you know, I'm all about not worrying about the price. So probably the worst person to ask, but in my opinion, the less time the more time you spend building, acquiring fiat to trade for Bitcoin, the better. So, that's my take on it.
Yeah. Borja, where do you stand on that? Is this just going to be kind of a slow and inevitable crawl up and to the right? Or do you think we could see some maybe more explosive action toward the end of this year and beginning of next? Or what are your thoughts?
I think we're bullish towards the end of this year. I do think also that Bitcoin is still very correlated to what happens at a macro level. So, I mean, like, if we're in a broader market, bull market, then Bitcoin will do well. But if markets in general start getting choppy, Bitcoin will suffer that too. So I do think that everything looks fine. Like, for the rest of this year, rates have been cut. We are counting or leaning onto 2 more additional cuts, which again is bullish for the market in general. But then we need to see what's going to happen in 2026. We need to understand how the macro context is going to look for next year. So I believe that the world is looking good for the end of this year. But we have to see how the world looks for next year. But so far, so good. About 26, we shall see.
Yeah, so far so good is right, guys. And I think we've covered a lot of topics today. I certainly appreciate everyone's time, insights, and expertise. Michael, it was the first time we got to chat, so thanks so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure to have you on the show. And Borja, I know you got to get out of here. So guys, thank you so much. This was such a fun panel, and it's so great to learn from people with so much knowledge in the space like you guys. And I know I and our audience certainly appreciates your guys' time today. And I think we're going to be wrapping up here in a sec. I'm just getting my messages from the team here. I guess, Michael, we did have one question that we wanted to ask you.
I'm out. Bye, Hank. Thank you.
You're out of here. Okay, Borja. Gotcha.
Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Yeah. See you, Borja. So, Michael, I mean, we've covered a lot today. Are there any final thoughts that you have about Bitcoin or where we're at right now? It seems like you feel pretty confident. We're in a good place. We're, it's going to be melting our faces sooner rather than later. We feel pretty good about everything we chatted about today.
Yeah, I think everything's fine. It was nice meeting you, Hank. I don't know if we've met in person before, but
we have not yet. Yeah.
I don't know if you know much about me, but I've been running this, Bitcoin Builders Conference called TabCon for 8 years. And it's something where everyone's welcome, and it's a very fun event. So that's just a little bit about me. A truly open source conference. You can't buy your way on stage. Everything's submitted through GitHub. It's a very, very fun conference where we really focus on everything from freedom communication via like mesh networks all the way to like, hardcore protocol stuff and like Bitcoin specific. So, that's my little shill. If you're on the East Coast area and you ever want to come down, would love to have you. But yeah, this whole core and knots thing. I mean, we have version 30 being released officially. We're going to have a Luke shirt at TabConf available, where he's tweeting out Bitcoin version 30 is malware with the death count of Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. The Bitcoin obituary kind of idea. Yeah. I asked Luke, I was like, can I put this on a shirt? He says, sure. I think it's going to be silly to put this on a shirt, but sure. So I got his permission. So we're going to do a small batch print of those. And we pretty much welcome all discussion, whether someone is a strong hardcore not supporter, like for instance, like a Luke type would want to come to the conference. I would definitely very much entertain a cordial debate, which we don't have enough of. The one thing I feel like we're really missing is some sort of direct, non-abrasive, but a more or less cordial, confrontational fireside chat with Luke, where Luke can go long form and not be interrupted. And we haven't really seen this yet. We had this sort of opportunity at Bitcoin Plus in a few different situations, but like for instance, the one fireside chat we had was with Jason and Luke. And I mean, what we really probably want is someone who is very like non-biased sort of moderator fireside chat with Luke and be very direct and very like cordial about not like doing any gotchas and really dig in, because what I think we'll find out is Luke is extremely consistent, given that he defines things certain ways and he has certain ideas of how, everything's put together. And when you know that sort of background and that premise, you realize, oh, Luke is being potentially very, very consistent with some of his thoughts. And they actually do make sense if you agree with some of these preliminary ideas that he also subscribes to. So these are things I feel like this is a big missing thing. I think we have a lot of, I've already said this a few times, some levels of cargo cult abstraction where you have a lot of people fighting this fight and they don't actually, they're kind of removed, and we're sort of exhausting ourselves fighting these second, third, fourth layer sort of arguments. Like for instance, one of these arguments are your node will fall over and your cloud provider will turn you off kind of idea. Like these are like bizarre, like just things that make no sense, like to any capacity. Yeah. This is all like so far away from like the original sort of nugget and core of knots. But yeah, so I think that's what we're missing. And yeah, and again, like the conference I'm running is really like based on really trying to move Bitcoin forward, have meaningful conversations, and build meaningful stuff while we're in person. So if you are someone who's like, hey, Bitcoin's already a good idea, I don't need to go to a conference and listen to someone go up on stage and tell me this is a good idea. I want to know what's next, you know?
Yeah.
Conf is for you. We've been running the conference for 8 years. So it's a very like legit conference that's community organized and run, open source. So check out tabconf.com. And that is my pitch. I appreciate you letting me pitch that on your.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that because that has been the conversation for so long, right? It's like we've been going to see why is Bitcoin important, but let's start having conferences of what's coming next, because I think we already know it's here to stay, and we should be keeping eyes out to the future and what's coming up on Bitcoin's plate going forward. So we certainly appreciate you hosting that conference. You said it was tabconf.com if people want to get more information. Is that correct?
Yep, tabconf.com. So tabconf.com. And some people are like, what the hell? Why is it named Tab? Well, historically, the new joke is, well, we typically provide 4 individual spaces at the conference, and 4 spaces equals the tab. So boom.
Okay. Well, there we go.
Yeah. At this point, it really doesn't have a meaning, but it's a little bit OPSEC, or, it's like low key, where we don't shout Bitcoin. Like it's just everything, like even like the merch that we're trying to sell doesn't have like the Bitcoin logo on it. I think at this point, it's like low key swag and naming is the way to go for these sort of events. So
yeah. Well, you'll have to let us know when those obituary shirts come out. I think I'm gonna have to pick one up. That sounds like a really fun idea. So I'm glad you're taking the bull by the horns and creating those for the community, because I think that's fun. And that's kind of like is it bitcoindeaths.com? There's that website where it tells you about all the times Bitcoin's died.
Bitcoin obituaries. It's like 99bitcoins.com or something. But yeah, the conference is coming up October 13th through 16th in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you are interested, it is a very fun event that every level of expertise is welcome, and everyone always has a good time, no matter if you're completely new to Bitcoin and you like realize this is a great idea, or if you're a seasoned veteran. A lot of people feel like, oh, I'm not technical enough to come to TabConf, and everyone who comes that isn't technical is like, this is the best conference ever. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, it's got to be pretty good. You said 8 years running, right?
Yep.
Amazing. Well, all right, Michael. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate having you on the show. You bring such a great level of expertise that I'm still trying to wrap my head around the best I can, but I know all the other guys were very much understanding of a lot of things you're saying, but I'm trying, and I appreciate you guys' patience with me, and I appreciate you joining us today. It was a lot of fun.
Hank, nice meeting you. Nice to be on the show.
Yeah, thank you. All right. See you later, Michael. Appreciate your time. All right, gang. Well, that is a wrap for today's special episode of the Blockchain Report. I want to give a special shout out and thanks to all of our incredible guests today: Preston Pish, Matt Hill, Borja Martel Seward. Alex McShane wasn't able to join us today, but we got Walker America. He's a patriot, and we were pumped to have him. And of course, Michael Tidwell joining us to bring the heat for some of today's most divisive and popular topics in the Bitcoin space. As always, we'll be back with a normal episode of the Blockchain Report next week. Remember, Mondays, we start at 10 a.m. and we're over at 12 p.m. Pacific time. But Tuesday through Friday, that's the rest of the week, we're on our normal time of 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific. So as always, thanks for joining us on our show today. If you haven't already, we'd really love it if you just gave us a little like or subscribe to RoxomTV, or yours truly at Hank at RoxomTV, because we're doing our best to bring you the best signal in the business. So as always, thank you for tuning in. And that's a wrap for this week's episodes of the Blockchain Report. And we will see you all next week. Until then, stay safe, stay informed, and as always, HODL on. See you guys next week.